or Caro continue to admit people while we get started. Thank you. So we're so pleased to have you here and for participating in the chat so that we can really start to build this community of learning and growth and action. My name is Marna Anderson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the director of Nonviolent Peaceforce USA, working out of the office in St. Paul. We have nearly 250 people registered today from a lot of different countries. And after these past few very difficult months, I know this topic, the topic of addressing racial injustice, really resonates with people, and that so many people are trying to figure out what we can do to end systemic racism. We really love having this live format so we can see one another. We've done everything we can to prevent somebody hacking into our meeting. If that does happen, we'll remove the individuals causing the harm as quickly as we can. And if we are unable to do that, we'll have to end our meeting. Our goal is that this is a safe place and a place where we help to build community. So we're gonna have a facilitated conversation with our presenters. There'll be time for Q&A and a request for action. As we conclude, you will be directed to a survey, and we ask that you fill that out. We really want to know how this is helping you in your internal work and in your and being connected to one another in Nonviolent Peaceforce. You will be on mute during the presentation. You can put your questions in the chat box, and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible. Before we start, I would like us to hold in our minds and our hearts the families of George Floyd, Daunte Wright, Breonna Taylor, and the hundreds of others whose lives have been lost because of police violence and brutality. It is this entrenched system of state violence that has launched end peace programming in the US. We're one part of a global movement that is rethinking security and demanding for a future where everyone is truly safe. After the verdict of Derek Chauvin, I was at George Floyd Square, and there was a minister who spoke, and he said, "We can't be satisfied with this trickle of justice we've received." And he quoted the scripture, "Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream." And his message, I think, really needs to stay with us. He said, "Celebrate tonight, but get up tomorrow and keep working and have dissatisfaction on your lips because we have a lot of work to do." I'm going to turn the session over to our fearless and wonderful leader, who many of you have had the opportunity to meet, but not in person for some time because she's located in Geneva. Tiffany Eastholm, the Executive Director of Nonviolent Peaceforce. Thank you so much for being here and for facilitating this conversation today.
Thank you, Marna. Hello and welcome to everyone, old friends and new friends. Welcome together into this space. As always, we are grateful to come together around these topics and for your ongoing interest in the work of Nonviolent Peaceforce and our collective commitment as a community for seeking justice and reducing violence in the worlds that we work in and the world that we live in. So great to be together today. It's my very great pleasure and what a treat to be able to spend some time with our newest programming team. As you know, we've got country programs in different parts of the world, and our newest program team is indeed right there in the United States. In one of our home heartland in Minnesota is where we've started. And we've got a wonderfully talented, committed, inspiring group of people who are implementing and leading this new work that we're doing in the US. And so this is a great opportunity to explore that and learn more about it and to learn from one another and to take some inspiration and some reflection. So I welcome you all, encourage you to be comfortable and get ready for a nice conversation. And we look forward to your questions and inputs after we've heard from our two speakers. So before we get started, let me just introduce these two wonderful speakers to you, and I'm going to read their bios because they're so rich and interesting. I don't want to miss anything. First, let me introduce Kalyan Mendoza. He's our new Director of Programming for the United States. He uses he, him pronouns, is a queer, hard of hearing Filipino-American organizer and human rights activist who has been engaged in nonviolent civil resistance for the past 2 decades. He was a national field director for Amnesty International and is the co-founder of Across Frontlines, an organization that works alongside frontline human rights defenders to keep the communities safe from state and non-state actor violence. And together with Kalyan, we have Manu Lewis. He's a program specialist, also using he, him pronouns, is a recognized community leader who lived his formative years in Minneapolis and Atlanta. In 2006, co-founded the Minnesota chapter of Criminals and Gang Members Anonymous, CGA, a lifestyle recovery program. He's a restorative justice practitioner and has received awards for his works on the group violence intervention project LIFE initiative. Manu also has experience building community accountability with police, serving as a community representative on the police community support team with the 4th Precinct. Manu is trained and certified as a trauma-informed care specialist, a psychological first aid respondent, and circle keeper. So Kalyan and Manu, welcome. And again, let me extend my gratitude and excitement for having you as part of the NP team and really taking on these leadership roles in this new program. So let's get started and get learning a little bit about where we're at. And Manu, we're going to start with you and get you to talk a little bit about, just tell us about what the programming in Minnesota does look like, and really thinking about what needs, why did we start this? What needs were we responding to? And then what are we doing to respond to those needs? Using this toolkit of unarmed civilian protection as a tool for violence reduction and creating safer space.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Tiffany, for that introduction. And thank you all for your time that you're sharing with us at this time. And I think I will go back to, I think it was like October of last year when I was informed of a training that was taking place in Minneapolis. And, you know, I'm really big on development. So I took advantage of the training, which was basically it was reimagining school safety, right? So going through the training, I realized that there was alternatives to mitigating violence and actually getting individuals engaged in the conversation of what safety looks like. Excuse me. So from that point, I kept looking for more information and ways of getting involved. And with NP, a position became open for program specialists, which, you know, I was so elated. I was like, this is for me, because I understood that the moral compass and the value system of NP actually look for ways to not only listen to the community, but actually provide training and support with community members on how they can actually participate in keeping their community safe. So I think the part that I came in is with working with the school system, within the school system, because it was a theory that when we're talking about rethinking safety and reimagining school safety, we have to, we would very much want to include the voice of the children that are actually in the schools, the staff and the community, because we understand that a lot of schools are the hub for community safety. So from that lane, we actually engage the community members and the school system in how can we provide these methods and methodologies and these trainings and the support with schools and school systems to reimagine what safety looks like. So during that training, I think it was 14 individuals that went through the training that are actually actively engaged in creating safer communities, safer schools, and safer communities. So from that point, we just see that in talking about And in referring to the most marginalized communities, how do we engage those communities in reinforcing even their concept that they have the ability and the means to keep their own community safe? And it's a rewarding experience, right? In getting individuals to think outside of the box in how do we keep our community safe? Because I think at this time, that's what we're really tasked with. So through these teachings, we really look forward to, and some of our objectives is to reduce violence and threats in the safety and security in the school systems. Another one is to build the capacity of the specialists that work in the schools who are trained in unarmed civilian protection methods, and also build on the pre-existing strengths within those particular communities, because the last thing we want to do is come into a community and tell them that we know what it is that would keep them safe. That's enforcing peace. And the most organic way to create peace systems is to facilitate peace systems and actually invest in the value system of humanity and the means of doing that. So I don't know how much time I have, but is that with that? I see some smiles. Is that okay?
That's a great start. Thank you, Manu. We'll come back. Okay. But thanks for the great introduction and getting us off, and really reminding us that this is a time to rethink old paradigms and rethinking security, rethinking how we achieve safety, the importance of inclusivity, working together, and to not, taking this idea of enforcing anything out of our minds as our new way forward. So great to hear from you. And Kalyan, can we call upon you to add and join in on the overview of the programming? And I think you're going to talk a bit about some more of the work that we've been doing on the ground, Brooklyn Center, and other bits of work. So Kalyan, you are most welcome.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Thank you, Marna, and thank you, Manu, for really setting the stage. And welcome, everyone. I hope everyone's having a lovely spring day. Since February, when I came on board, Nonviolent Peaceforce has engaged in 10 protective actions. There were 8 protective actions that were focused in the Hennepin, at the Hennepin County Center, at the Brooklyn Center, and at various Stop API Hate events. Since February, we have trained 320 people, both virtually and in person. This includes folks like Rick and Sharon here. Hey, Rick and Sharon. Sam, who was at our community safety training at Little Earth several weeks ago, and then recently this past weekend, where we did an in-person community safety training that really focused on situational awareness, building threat assessments, and really providing folks with the tools that they need to be able to identify ways to keep themselves and their communities safe. Just to kind of zero in on some of the actions, we were present on March 8th for the first day of the trial of the Derek Chauvin trial. We were also there on April 19th and April 20th, which was the day before and the day of the verdict. At Brooklyn Center, Nonviolent Peaceforce was on the ground on April 12th, 14th, and 16th, where we had a small and very talented team of volunteers and staff who were able to provide support for 19 people who were injured with various commonly used munitions like tear gas, pepper spray, pepper balls, and rubber bullets, along with beanbag rounds. We provided protective accompaniment for 7 people, 3 of whom were 3 young Black men who had parked past the police line at the Brooklyn Center. And this occurred on the 14th, which was one of the days where the level of state violence and the use of commonly used munitions was very, very much escalated. And our team of four people were able to support them to get them out of the conflict area and to their the car their parking lot where their car was. I wish we do have, I wish I could paint a better picture, but if you can imagine, it's about an hour after sunset. The rank stench of CS gases in the air. There is a very palpable sense of panic and fear. And you could see, I remember looking into the eyes of these three young men and seeing them really pushed out of their window of tolerance. And at first they didn't know who we were. I was like, we're with Nonviolent Peaceforce, and they're like, I don't know what that means. And an auntie came out of the crowd and was like, y'all need to go with them right now. They're gonna get you home safe. And we were able to escort these three young men. And as we were approaching the police line, there was one officer in a armored vehicle that had shined their light on us. They had taken out their, I can't tell if it was a munitions, a tear gas canister gun or a shotgun, but we all had our hands up and were able to facilitate them being able to get out of there. Within the next 20 minutes is when they started to kettle in, which means all sides of the area were being covered by the police. And they started to arrest folks, protesters on the ground. So that's just kind of like just a couple threads in the tapestry of the work that we've been doing. Another piece that I've been very honored and just really appreciative of NP supporting is supporting my own community in stopping anti-Asian violence. We've provided trainings for groups around the country. For instance, API Women Lead, which is a survivor and women and femme and queer-led organization in Oakland who has really taken the lead on addressing anti-Asian violence. We were able to do a situational awareness training for their constituents. And I remember reading in one of the comments as we were signing off that after the training, someone said that for the first time, they felt like they had the tools that they needed to finally leave their house safely after having been under a state of fear, much like pretty much all of my community at this moment. And as many of you know, on April 20th, the verdict was guilty, and it was more of a jubilant moment. But what we do have looking up ahead of us are the trials of Kim Potter, the trials on August 23rd of the three other officers that were involved in the murder of George Floyd. And as we saw, even on the 20th, the murder of yet another, there have been at least, I think, three state killings of Black people here in the United States with a response from the community. From Ohio to North Carolina. The work that NP is doing is one that I've followed for the last decade, and it's been an honor to be here on staff and with the team, and really seeing how we take the lessons that we have learned with our partners in the Global South and now applying them here in the Global North. So yeah, that's a very hopefully quick overview of the work that's been happening. And I just want to acknowledge for Rick and Sharon and everyone that is on the call right now that has also participated in our trainings in the past and have supported both remotely and on the ground. Thank you so much. And I think it's very important to note that we all have a place in keeping our community safe. And we want to make sure that this work is accessible and that it really speaks to the skill sets of everyone. As an organization that believes in social justice, we want to make sure to support and uplift folks within the disabled community, folks that are immunocompromised, folks that aren't able to be on the ground, because as we know, on the ground means in the digital realm and also in the streets. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Kalyan. I mean, and really inspiring and motivational examples of some of the work that we've done. And a good reminder of like the importance, again, as we talk about inclusivity, how to create space to work together. Being safer and more secure is all of our responsibilities. And the only way we really substantively achieve that is if we work on it together and create sort of a new version of what that looks like. Manu, can I come back to you?
Yes.
Get you back on the hot seat. Give Kalyan a little minute to take a breath and a glass of water if he needs. And Manu, can we talk about just some of the challenges in the work that you've been doing? So we're hearing about the great efforts and what we're doing, but like all things worth doing are hard. And as we talked about in a team meeting yesterday, if it feels hard, it probably means we're doing it right. These are really big things we're taking on and trying to challenge. So it's great. I think it's really important that we talk openly to each other and learn from each other. So Manu, like in the work, in your part of the work that you've been doing, what has been the most challenging? And what are you learning from this as you go forward in this work?
So thank you for asking that question. That's a very important question. And I tend to look, because of last year, I seen the event of the social distancing or COVID-19 as an opportunity for individuals to focus on their individual lifestyles, how they were living, you know, people, places, and things, attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors towards other individuals. And I think that doing this work, I often run into the challenges of that are created sometimes with systems and how systems create barriers for individuals to actually work, fluidly with each other. And I think it's also a lot of trust factors, especially in the Black community, in trusting systems, right, that we know are put in place to operate in a certain capacity. But a lot of times when we're looking at resources and opportunities, some communities don't actually have a clear lane to those opportunities. Therefore, they get left out of the process, right? So, and you know, a lot of studies that I have done actually show that systems don't really bring out the values in humanity, right? So I think that's one of the challenges. And when we're talking about safety, and we have some communities like the African-American community that based on systems that has a struggle with trusting and seeing themselves being safe within those systems. So I think that's one of the challenges is with individuals actually being able to articulate what safety looks like, being able to articulate within their communities how safety feels, right? And, you know, in the course of building these relationships, it's very vital that we ask those questions to understand where people are coming from mentally, what safety looks like, and be able to facilitate those conversations, because there again, it's hard to articulate what safety looks like if I don't really have a good example of safety, right? And then in the course of that conversation, I don't, individuals do get left out of that conversation. So one of the challenges is being able to, with the best intentions, listen to the community and take into account that a lot of the community has their own perception of what safety is, and it looks different, but actually bringing into the fold all of the community, we bring all of the issues and all of the viewpoints of how can we actually establish safety. So one of the challenges is communicating with communities that, you know, have a mistrust in, and especially these police systems or these systems of policing.
And as you and Kellyanne remind us, we can only move with the speed of trust.
Indeed.
That great expression you guys use that I learned from you, and it's so accurate, and it takes time, and that's part of always the challenge of our work, is it does call for time.
Yes, ma'am. And if I can add to that, in this space, and even in this work, we realize that this work is not instantaneous. Safety does not come overnight, that it is a relationship building process that may take a course of a few years, right? So there's a commitment to that, which we, make sure the individuals understand that it is a growing process. And we are thinking about safety, are pushing up against safe systems that may not necessarily be open and welcome to the average individual, getting in a conversation about what safety looks like.
Right. Hundreds of years of systems of oppressions take more than a couple of weeks of, as great as it is, more than a couple of weeks or a couple of months of programming to contribute towards breaking down.
Indeed.
Thanks so much, Manu. And Kellyanne, I'm going to come back to you, and Manu set us up nicely for our next thought about what's the vision. So what do we hope to achieve by doing this kind of work in Minnesota as a starting place, and what would it look like for NP's work in the US over the coming months and years?
That's a wonderful question. In 2015, Dr. Angela Davis and Grace Lee Boggs, two women of color feminists who I've learned from so much, called all of us to do something that was to move away from just protest organizing and towards visionary organizing. And what that means is, what is a world that we want to inhabit? What is a world that we're building together? In the last year, what we have seen during this pandemic, during the uprisings, is that the state doesn't necessarily have the ability to take care of us. I'm from Jackson Heights, Queens, in New York City. We were the epicenter of the pandemic, and we were, quite frankly, left to die. And one thing that came out of that was, aside from the in content warning, medical trauma and violence. Aside from the, along with the, we saw our neighbors and those we cared about being taken out in body bags and placed in refrigeration trucks. Entire communities were in lockdown. Elders were not able to get their medication. And one thing that came out of that were mutual aid groups that responded from a place of solidarity, not charity. These were everyday people who cared enough about their neighbors to put their own health at risk. These were folks who were not immunocompromised, but at the time we didn't know, whether touching a bag of Doritos would get us COVID or just being outside would. But there was a group of us, not just in New York, but around the country, that responded to the incompetence of the government in terms of taking care of our communities. There's this one person named Alan who reached out to me directly. I put a call out to help kind of pick up medication for Filipino elders. And Alan was like, okay, what do you need? I can do this, and I can do this for the next 4 months, pretty much like every other week. Is that level of, I think, as Tiffany said, like a paradigm shift happening. People are seeing each other responsible for one another. And the work that's happening on the ground is mutual aid, and it's also mutual protection. When we're on the ground in the streets, we say, we keep us safe. And it is a clarion call by Black trans organizers to reimagine what safety can look like when we are not being surveilled by the state, when we are not being attacked by the state. The vision for NP is to bring and to offer the trainings, the learnings that we have gleaned in the Global South, and bring them here in the Global North. Because we are in a 500-year conflict. We have been in a centuries-long conflict on stolen land. And we are seeing with the rise of more blatant forms of white supremacy, whether that's at the January 6th Capitol riots or in the day-to-day lives of
Other people want it so badly.
folks, in communities. The vision is really about supporting the primacy of local actors to identify what does safety look like from a holistic perspective. What does physical, psychosocial, spiritual, energetic safety look like? And I really take this from my own heritage, and this is the ancestral gift that was left to my people, because we have survived centuries of colonization, centuries of genocide, centuries of occupation. And it is only through taking care of one another, protecting one another more fiercely, more intensely, and more lovingly than the state ever has, will we ever really be able to keep us safe and build true safety. The vision is about really tapping into that and speaking to the better, to the aspirational side of who all of us are, right? When we are able to say, I know my neighbor, when we're building relationships as NP does, when we're building confidence and supporting communities build confidence in protecting themselves, when we're offering an alternative to gun violence, like those are such powerful offerings. And it also really helps to nurture the ecosystem of peace and justice here on Turtle Island. In a year's time, I want to see more groups really seeing NP as a partner in building out their community safety. Next week, I'll be doing several talks, and during API month, we'll be working with Black and Asian national organizations focused on community safety to talk about the fraught relationships our communities have had, to acknowledge those histories, but also what is a path forward in order for us to all be able to build a safer, more just and more verdant world. So just to, in summary, I think the vision is for NP to show up in responsible, generative, and very in an approach based on our integrity in ways with communities that have been under attack, that have been in a state of violence and conflict, and to show, not tell, a way forward that doesn't rely on gun violence, that doesn't rely on the use of arms. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, Kalyan. Wonderful. Great. Well, now is a great moment to really think about being a bit interactive and getting to hear from folks who are listening in and about the questions that they have. So if you've got a question, some of you have already taken advantage of it, go ahead and write your questions up in the chat box, and we'll do our best to get to as many as we can. And we'll kick us off with a question from Randy. And maybe Manu, do you want to take this one? Randy's question is about how do NP teams, how can we maintain a stance about not taking sides when we're negotiating with opposite sides in disputes, in situations of what are blatant injustice, and again, dealing with decades and centuries of oppression. So to Randy, they feel like there's an obvious right and wrong inherent in the conflict that you guys are doing this work in. So how do we negotiate that space? And do you have thoughts about that?
Yes, ma'am. Well, being a nonpartisan organization, and I think we really focus on providing protection to and for individuals who are, engaged or receiving on the receptive end of violence. So when we're talking about actually taking sides, one is who possesses a weapon. who is the armed actors, and for the individuals that are seeking to be protected, how does that look? What's their activities, and actually engaging them on how can we provide protective measures, but at the same time forming those relationships, not a partnership with armed actors, but actually a acknowledgement of who we are and what our purpose is in this, in any activity that we actually get into, and that we are primarily concerned about keeping people safe from violence, right? So I think that when we look through those human lenses, it's easy to see if, and especially when we're requested, how we can be supportive, but also that engagement in what does that look like, and not being afraid of being able to articulate our position, right? So it is against those who, not against, but not in solidarity with armed actors, those who are perpetuating violence, and just being conscious that everyone has a right to live, and how does that look? How does that feel? And being intentional about having those conversations, because in different communities and different cultures, it looks different. So not coming in assuming that we're going to take a side, but actually being able to facilitate what peace looks like in this situation.
On the side of peace and nonviolence. Thanks so much. And Kalyan, we've had a couple questions related to police. So Trisha and Patrick have asked questions that are sort of in the same family. How, were police informed about the actions that we've been involved in? And how did people react to seeing the NP teams out? And how do we form relationships with police and armed actors? People who know of NP's work know that we work on that in other country programs. What does that look like in our work in the Twin Cities?
Sure. So at the back in early March, we notified, we didn't ask for permission, we notified the Sheriff's Department of Hennepin County that we would be providing unarmed civilian protection. And this is a good practice utilized by human rights observers at Amnesty International to observers with the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. It's a notification approach that we also utilize in the Global South. And it's very important that we are notifying and not and just giving as much information as possible. Like, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is what we're going to be looking like, and this is our primary role and purpose. And it's in theory, in a perfect world, that would mean that we would be able to do our jobs to protect civilians, unarmed civilians in a conflict zone. Unfortunately, even what I saw in Brooklyn Center was as we were trying to evacuate people who had been shot, there was one person that had an epileptic seizure due to the type of lights that were being used. We were still being shot at with different munitions. We were still being exposed to different munitions. It took our team about a couple days to recover, even from just tangentially being exposed. But it is important for us to make sure to do that as a way for us to be able to make sure that we're able to get people out of there, out of the conflict as efficiently and as safely as possible. I think, forgive me, Tiffany, the third question was around,
how did people react to the NP team, seeing us in visibility gear? Were we recognized?
Yeah, I'll be quite honest. People are like, "Are you the police?" There were many people that got very close to my face and asked, who's paying you? And I think that's one thing that NP does really well is really to do a stakeholder analysis in an area. And I want to give Manu props for this. Early on at the beginning of the program, when we were talking about having on the ground teams, Manu had cautioned us around engaging with different programs that the city was funding. And because of that, there's this group, a list. I don't know enough background, but they have been scrutinized, pushed out of spaces, and basically unable to do any kind of safety work on the ground because of that association. So having folks who are local, who understands the nuances and the dynamics of the local political system is extremely important. When it comes to, I'm sorry, I'm like on my, I'm having like my second COVID shot side effects. So forgive me if I tend to go on. I'm sorry, Tiffany, can you, what was the second question?
Yeah, it's okay. How people were receiving us. And so you were
Yes.
talking about, right. There.
Yes, I mean, it was a range of people thanking us for being there. We had Mel's godson come up to us at one point in Brooklyn Center, seeing the Nonviolent Peaceforce on our backs. But on the most part, and quite understandably, people were very wary of who we are. Because they have said, they're like, we've never heard of you before. You're not from here. And I was like, hold up, we're in St. Paul. We've been doing the work here for the last 20 years. And I think it's because of the fact that our work is optically seen as a international work, that we're seen as outsiders coming in. So that's why it's really important, as Manu has said, that we build right relationship with communities on the ground, with everyone on the ground, in order to be able to do the work. Because we can't, if we're not moving at the speed of trust, we're moving from a place of haste and scarcity, where people will question, our intentions, will question everything about us. One particular instance of this is there's this amazing mutual aid organization called Justice Frontline Aid, who had seen us a few times, and we would touch base with them on the ground, but we hadn't met with their leadership just because it was chaos the last couple of months. But there was a lot of distrust and questioning. So, we set up a meeting on the 19th. We let them know, they knew, the work, they did their research, and they really grilled us about who we were and what is our intention and what is our role. So as long as NP continues to protect unarmed civilians, as long as we stay within that lane, and we're seen as a nonpartisan organization that is building peace within communities, that's really kind of like where our value add is to the ecosystem of what's happening here in the US.
Thank you. Manu, can I come back to you on the schools? We've had some question about our work in schools, really recognizing that some of the violence we see in schools in the US hits international headlines with school shooters and active shooters within a school zone. And the understandable knock-on effect of that, of course, is parents who are terrified. And so while we want to talk about nonviolence and unarmed strategies in the face of having to protect their most precious babies, those become really tough conversations. So can you just talk a little bit about sort of what our strategies are, both for how we would manage those situations and how do we engage with parents who are really understandably afraid?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that. So I was just in our training modules and in the course of conversation and engagement, we really, and especially in the trainings, it's a piece, situational awareness and tactful mindfulness, which is getting individuals to be aware of what's going on around them, not assuming, but actually paying a little bit more attention to the environments that they live in. Threat assessments is another, and that is a tool for individuals, which is a part of the training, to actually be able to see what some threats in the immediate environment may be based on the social setup and what they know from their own personal experiences, right? So these are some of the ways that we get, and at least, and especially those parents who actually want to be engaged, give them tools that they can use with that engagement. The distraction, de-escalation methods, these are tools that through the course of the training and the engagement and the support that parents are allowed or see as being beneficial in being a part of that safety model, being a part of keeping the community safe. And what they see and what they experience is real and true. And how do you respond when you see certain things? So the unarmed civilian protection strategies not only give the students and the younger people maybe some tools that they may have never had, but it also provides different resources and like some real tangible tools that they can go out and use, right? In real time, which actually empowers them in their efforts to be a part of that safety model. So it's not easy, right? If we don't know exactly what to do or what to look for or what we see when we see it. But that's where the support comes in within and after the training. And because it's ongoing, right? The threats may change depending on the situation or depending on the communities. So it is about, creating those relationships in which we can have dialogue on, well, what does this look like? We're not prepared for this, and be able to facilitate how to deal with that. So I think a lot of parents are rightfully concerned about, our babies' futures. And when we talk about rethinking safety, 5 years from now, how does that look and how do we engage now? And parents are looking for the tools to be able to use now and even communicating with their children and their babies as they take them to school and be able to debrief, what happened in the day. So it really opens up for healthier communication, a little deeper dive into what we see and how that looks, and especially how does that make individuals feel when certain elements take place or certain actions take place in their schools, right? And being able to mitigate some issues before they actually happen. So I think parents' concern is rightfully so, but being able to, share and provide and support those tools as we move forward is what parents are really in need of.
That's great. I mean, it's really addressing those immediate safety and security concerns with as rich of a toolbox as we can, while also like digging into those root causes, those sort of what's causing these situations to occur in the first place, and in the long term, trying to also contribute. So great to hear about that. Okay, as always, we're running really out of time. Kellyanne, I'm going to try and get you to do a quick response to what really is probably a bigger topic. But we did have a question actually from one of our NP colleagues who works in our South Sudan program, wondering how is the work in the US? We've talked about sort of building the lessons learned from the programming that NP's done in the Global South and using that in the US programming. Could you do just a quick reflection on that? And then we'll wrap up our time together.
Gladly. Just like how the women protection teams in South Sudan have really been co-built with NP in terms of protecting their communities, I think that is the trainings, the confidence building, and the support are some of the very tangible offerings that we have to be able to bring here to communities that are under attack. And that's what we're seeing, and that's what we've been seeing with different safety collectives within the AAPI community. And I hope that we continue to bring those lessons learned into here in the Global North.
Sounds great. It sounds like a whole nother subject for another cafe. Great. Well, thank you to both of you, Manu and Kellyanne. We would love to have more time. And Kellyanne, we know you're not feeling well, so thank you so much for rallying for our time together. We've got one more special treat to enjoy in terms of somebody to share some thoughts and experiences with us. We're really happy, and I'm excited to introduce to you all Deepa Sureka. Deepa's a board member of Nonviolent Peaceforce. She spent the last 2 decades working in the sphere of digital advertising, e-commerce building, and growing businesses. And she has taken a real interest in the work of unarmed civilian protection and Nonviolent Peaceforce. She is engaged in all kinds of interesting work around social justice. And Deepa, I would be happy to welcome you to join us and share some thoughts that you have with the group.
Thank you, Tiffany. And it is my honor to be part of NP's board and work alongside you and the amazing NP team. Manu, Kellyanne, can I thank you guys? Thank you so much for all you're doing right in our backyard. So my story is far simpler. I immigrated to New York from India in the early 2000s. And just like most immigrants, I was hungry to succeed, to do well and build this beautiful American life. And I learned quickly to keep my head down and do what I do best, which is work hard, work fast, and work smart. So I grew my career and I started living the American dream. And then I had kids. And in those moments, you start thinking about the world, not just as you see it, but as you want it to be. And it is in one of those moments that I stumbled upon Nonviolent Peaceforce through a Women for Good forum on Facebook, like a lot of things happen. So I was quite intrigued just by the name itself. I mean, coming from India, that's the land of Gandhi. And I was like, I felt like we own this name, even though we don't always practice it. So one thing led to another. And I had the opportunity to meet Gilda, Tiffany, and Tiff in probably one of the most surreal evenings. I was surrounded by people who are basically living a world through the eyes and experiences of war-torn regions like Iraq, Myanmar, South Sudan. And their stories of protecting communities, saving lives just with their presence, even when bombs showered right around where they were at, it gave me goosebumps. And learning that food drop sites are the sites that cause most violence. I mean, mind you, it's the very same morning I had taken my kids to fill food bags for Rise Against Hunger. My stomach churned at the thought that a good intent could be costing lives. So on my car ride, I had like a million questions. Are they for real? This is amazing. Why don't more people know about Nonviolent Peaceforce? And how could I get involved? Yes, they're for real. As I mentioned, I'm a proud board member and I can speak to their awe-inspiring work led by the teams across the countries we talked about and now the United States. My favorite thing is to get an email from one of the programs where they share information or like a feedback from a community member who's just expressing gratitude for helping a person cross borders safely, or gratitude for saving a young girl's life from harm's way. So for me, and like many of us, 2020 was a year of reckoning as well as awakening. As the virus brought us and our country to the standstill, the murder of George Floyd really told us who we have become. And it made me angry. It made many of us rather angry. And I felt like, what can we do about it? We are in a place where there are more guns in this country than people. You can look that up, actually, more guns than humans in this country. We're now a nation that is living in fear. And as a parent, it is the exact opposite of the world I want it to be. So now I sleep better knowing that Nonviolent Peaceforce is taking the task in their hands right in our backyard. I am grateful for the work you guys are doing. And I do hope that we all can do everything we can to support you. So my request for you is simple. Do what you can. It takes a village. Donate, talk about Nonviolent Peaceforce's work with your friends and family, and spread the work. There are many ways we can get involved. So I hope you will. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepa. It's great to hear from you and nice to see you here. And for the final wrap up, Marna Anderson, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Deepa, for your inspiring, just telling us how you got involved. It's always really wonderful to hear those stories. Really appreciate it. If you go to the chat right now, you have a link. If you'd like to make a donation, we would be extremely grateful. We also have a survey we'd like you to fill out. And then finally, there's resources and further readings for you on racism and social and racial justice. So we ask you to take a look at those. And join us again in a couple months. We'll be having another cafe, and so watch for news about that. And please stay in touch. We want to hear from you. If you didn't get your question answered and you want to make sure it does, you know, maybe one of our Amy or Gilda will reach out to you, or feel free to contact us and we'll start a conversation with you through email or on the phone. So thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day. We will be leaving up the stuff in the chat so you can do the link for this, the resources, the survey, and the donate page. Thank you. And if I could ask the presenters to just stay on and we can just have a quick debrief, that would be great. Thank you. And the rest of you, we'll see you again. Thank you so much. Please stay in touch. It's good to see you, Tracy.